to the Carson City School Board meeting tonight. I call this meeting to order. We'll start with the flag salute. Lupe, would you like to begin? Moving on to number 2, adoption of the agenda as submitted for possible action.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mike, second by Joe. Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to number 3, superintendent's report for information only. Mr. Stokes, I think Hose is in the house.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you. HOSA is indeed in the house, and we're so happy to have students and family and our sponsors from the various schools to be here to introduce those folks. So let's get right to it. We have from Carson Middle School, Victoria Jacoby and her students. I'd like to invite her to come forward.
I'm Mrs. Jacoby, and I'm from Carson Middle School, and I'm the health and HOSA teacher, and I have some students here that placed at the Nevada HOSA competition.
Hi, my name is Maria Gonzalez. The green light.
Okay, so
And you don't have to hold it.
all
It's
right.
all new technology. I swear we're not going to make it any harder.
There'll be a quiz.
So my name is Maria Gonzalez, and I competed in the health career display, and I placed third.
My name is Emily Tran. I did the health education competition and I placed first.
My name is Dalia Warren, and I placed first in medical terminology.
My name is Angie Portillo, and I placed second in medical terminology.
So I think this was the first year that Carson Middle School had HOSA, isn't it? Second year? So did you guys participate in the first year?
Yeah.
Yeah? What did you learn that you used this year to place?
Cramming at the last second isn't the best idea.
It's good that you learned that early. It took me a long time.
I'm still processing that.
Right? Does anybody have any other questions? Anybody? Well, congratulations. We're looking forward to you guys going forward to high school. Thank you.
Nice job.
Next, we'd like to invite the folks from Carson High School to come forward, and instructor Kelly Gustafson, if you would start us out, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stokes and school board members, for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Kelly Gustafson. I am the CHS HOSA Future Health Professionals Advisor, co-advisor with Frank Sacalarius, and we have a new advisor on staff this year, Michelle Stedfield. This is my vice president here, Crystal Vargas, and I'm just gonna let her go with it. There you go. That's why she gets to be here. Go for it. Look, I wrote it down for you, right there,
Oh no. Okay.
so I can take pictures.
Oh no. Okay. Good evening. I'm Crystal Vargas. I'm the vice president of the Carson High HOSA chapter. So, okay, March 17th through the 20th, 74 of our HOSA members attended the State Leadership Conference in Las Vegas. Oh, I'm out of breath. I ran here. Okay. Sorry, I had to go pick up my grandma. Oh, okay. Once again, we were very successful. Our chapter awards included Outstanding HOSA Chapter, HOSA 100 Award Gold, HOSA Membership Award Gold, largest chapter with 348 members, second in National Service Project, third in Sister School Challenge, and Chapter of the Year.
We also qualified 29 members for the International Leadership Conference in Orlando, Florida in June. And we're going to be taking 21 of those 29. We only had 8 that are not able to attend. So on behalf of HOSA, thank you for allowing us to present this evening and for your continued support of CHS HOSA. And just a little thanks to Frank and Tara and Michelle for chaperoning and helping out as advisors and taking all of these students to the state competition in Vegas. And then our qualifying members are going to come up and give their names and their events and their places. Thanks. You can stay there, and you can have your team join us.
Okay. Go. Okay. I'm Crystal Vargas, as I just said.
I'm Lisbeth Orozco.
And I'm Ashley Fitzpatrick.
We competed in MRC Partnership, Medical Reserve Corps. For this event, we worked alongside Western Nevada MRC to improve emergency preparedness within our community. As a result, we got second place at state. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Gay Cortez Solis. I did transcultural healthcare as my event, and I placed 3rd place. Yeah.
I'm Jasmine Thind, and I placed 2nd in pharmacy science.
I'm Bianca Sanchez, and I placed 5th in medical assisting.
I'm Rochelle Dominguez Hernandez.
I'm Savannah Sharp.
And I'm Haley Witten, and we placed 4th in public health.
We also had 3 other group members who could not be here: Alize Gonzalez, Selena Hernandez, and Maria Juarez.
I'm Taniqua Willard. I competed in the healthcare display board competition, and I qualified for nationals through the healthcare issues exam.
Hello, I'm Lauren Roby, and I placed 3rd in veterinary medicine.
I'm Jacob Carlson.
My name is Sydney Lloyd.
I'm Jennifer Arts.
My name is Garrett Clampett. And we took 1st place in public health. And we also had another member by the name of Lucas Van Brow that could not be with us. Oh, yes. Today.
Congratulations, you guys. Make us proud in nationals. We'll hope to see you when you get back with all those other medals you're going to get while you're there. So good luck.
Madam President, members of the board, one other group from Carson High School that has also had a great season is our speech and debate team at Carson High School. I'd like to invite Mr. Patrick Mobley to come forward, please.
I turned it off. All right, I'm Patrick Mobley. I'm the coach of Carson High School Speech and Debate. I have with me 4 of our 6 national qualifiers so far. I also have our first state champion in about 2 decades in the house with me. The team has had its most successful year so far. We had the best team in the league in dramatic interpretation, program oral interpretation. We got top 3 in duo interpretation, top 3 overall in speech events. So we are wrapping up an excellent year. And we still could have 2 or 3 more kids qualified to nationals by the time the year wraps up. So I'm going to let my 4 that are here talk about their events, some of our fundraisers, and hopefully they can deal with talking while sitting down, because usually we stand.
You can hold the mic.
Okay.
It's all good. You can sit too.
Okay.
Okay. So good evening, my name is Mary Milburn, and I was state champion in informative speaking, and I also qualified for nationals in program oral interpretation. Program oral interpretation is an event where you take published plays, books, movie scripts, and like the gist, and you cut words from them and you condense it into your own 10-minute performance.
Hi, I'm short. Hi. My name is Kieran Dazzo, and I qualified for nationals in dramatic interpretation, and that's basically where you take a 10-minute section from a book or a movie, and your goal is to make the audience cry.
You should probably read our budget then.
Hi, my name is Kate Torres. I qualified and placed second in original oratory, which is basically a 10-minute persuasive speech that is your original work, and I did mine on sex trafficking.
My name is Rosalind Macy. I competed in duo and we qualified for nationals in this. And it's basically a partner event where you act out a play or a book in 10 minutes.
And my name is Sophia Peterson. I also qualified in program oral interpretation, but more importantly, I'm here to talk about fundraising. So we have 3 fundraisers that Speech and Debate is doing in order to raise enough money to go to our nationals, which is in Dallas, Texas. And we have a lot of people who qualified, so we need a lot of money. We have 3 at 2 different places. So one of them is at Flavors of India, where we're going to be doing kind of a show and dinner, and that's going to be April 27th, and then also in May 25th. And then we also have a kind of Paint for Debate event at Rustically Divine, where you get to paint a sign, and it's really cool. And that's going to be May 18th. We haven't figured out how much tickets are going to cost for the speech and the show at Flavors of India, but the tickets for Paint for Debate at Rustically Divine are going to be $45, and you can buy those tickets from any of us. They haven't been made yet, but they will be.
That's awesome, you guys. So how many people competed? I mean, if we're a state champ and we have all these awards, you've built quite the speech and debate program.
Here, I'll just I'll actually pick it up. So our regular league has about 18 schools. A regular tournament has 150 to 200 students in it. For the state competition, we are now looking, that adds all the South. So that is over 30 schools with now pushing like 300 students at any given competition.
That's awesome. You've done a great job building this program too. We really do appreciate all the hard work you've put in.
And also I have got my assistant coach and my wife, Nikki Mobley, in the background. And then we also have a new assistant, Mr. Joe Clark has joined us and is my co-teacher right now. And then I've got some alumni, Sandro Figueroa, 2-time national qualifier, and Jocelyn Manzano, another national qualifier, that comes back and helps us out as well. So we have gotten a nice network of support so that things that I'm not that great at, somebody who I know is.
Good job, you guys. Appreciate it.
Congratulations, everybody. That's fantastic.
And good luck.
Madam President, members of the board, I have a few other things that I'd like to tell you about. This morning I was at Carson High School and was able to participate in a really neat activity. The members of the Fountain Foursquare Church, Pastor Chris White, put together 100 envelopes that looked like this. And in each envelope was a $50 bill. And Mr. White provided this for every teacher and staff member at Carson High with no strings attached, and basically said, we want you to pay this money forward and do it however you want. Find a student that's in need, use it for yourself. Just feel the fun of giving, donating, and I wanted to let you know about it. It was really a neat thing. And I asked if I could have a copy of the form so I could write a thank you note. And he said, well, here, yeah, please participate. So I would like to pay it forward. I was hoping that our kids from Speech and Debate would stay, and I'd like to donate my pay it forward to their fundraising efforts. And I'll send that to Mr. Mobley in the morning. But I thought you should know about it. It was really a neat gesture. And to just say what a great community we live in, that people do things like that for our schools and for other needy people and activities. And then finally today, Mr. Fueling and I were over at the legislature, and I was glad to be there when the Department of Taxation, actually it's the Committee of Taxation, heard AB 244, which was Al Kramer's bill, which is an adaptation of what has become known as WC1, which is a way for schools to have access to new revenues by which they can build a school. And so while some of the details are still being finalized, we'll make a presentation on this bill to the trustees so that you can understand more about what it is and how we will benefit, because really it's only for Carson City. And we'll tell you more about that as time gets closer. But unless you have questions, that's my report for the evening.
No, thank you very much. Moving on to board reports. Casey from Pioneer High, let's start off with you.
Hello, my name is Casey Wilfram from Pioneer High School, and the new building is now open, and it's it's really nice. We got a new kitchen, some really amazing science rooms, a really good gym. We're planning on putting a rock wall in it soon, I think, and yeah, it's a really good gym. It's a really nice building in general. The end of course writing exam test is this week. And spring break will be April 15th through April 22nd. Enjoy the break. April 25th, there is a science field trip to the Carson River. And April 29th is an early release day. Prom tickets are now on sale. Visit the office or go see Miss Allen. Tomorrow, April 10th, is the first volleyball club activity at 2:30. And there's also a ski trip tomorrow at Squaw Valley. And that's all.
Thank you. Mrs. Crossman.
Okay, for Fremont Elementary School, the Mom and Son Ball is this Friday. It's at the Governor's Mansion, and tickets are still available. It is open to the community, so if you'd like to go have a night out with your son, you can support Fremont's PTA as well. For Fritch Elementary School, Mr. Brown said the world-famous talent show will be this Thursday at 5:30 in the multipurpose room. So if you've got nothing else to do and want to see some really talented young kids, you can go see that. And also for the Nevada Association of School Boards, I'd like to let you know that last week we had a joint teleconference with the Executive Committee and the Board of Directors, and they approved the recommended Executive Director. We're in the process of finalizing the contract, and that's set to be approved this Friday in the teleconference for that. And so I think I can go ahead and introduce her name because I don't foresee any difficulties with it. So her name is Deb Oliver. She retired here and lives in Dayton. She has years of experience as a teacher and then as a professional development trainer. She worked with, I'm going to say the name wrong, but Houghton Mifflin, and helped prepare that. She has experience in teaching digital learning. She worked with the QEd conference, that is a big conference down in LA area. And she also worked as an executive director for a nonprofit in Colorado. So she has executive director experience and has quite a vast experience. I think you guys are going to be excited to meet her. She's ready to hit the ground running and has already expressed nervousness that we have a conference coming up in November and don't yet have speakers. So she's going to get on that. So hopefully all goes well on Friday, and you guys will get a chance to meet her. So.
For Carson Middle School, they're having their family engagement night tomorrow night, April 10th at 5:30 p.m. in the library. And then also tomorrow, their choir, drama, and musical students are attending a play, I guess, at Carson High School in the morning at 9 a.m. And then they're having the family engagement night, like I said, tomorrow. And then on the 11th, April 11th, they're having their 6th grade track meet, and that's also at Carson Middle School. And for Boardrick Bray, last Friday, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade choir was able to sing 2 songs at the Pinwheel for Prevention ceremony at the Nevada State Legislature right out in front of the building. And after that, they had a couple other presentations, all about domestic violence. Peggy Sweetland was there, and she gave a update on McKinley Vento. And then the kids were able to plant the pinwheels that you see as you drive down in front of the building. Some of the kids helped plant all those pinwheels. So it was a really good ceremony. I was able to attend it, and it was an enjoyable event. And that's really about all they have going on there right now, so that ends my report.
Okay, for Empire, their noetic math competition is this coming Friday. So Susan will be able to give us an update on the results, and I'll be able to share that with you at our next meeting. They have begun training their teachers, paraprofessionals, and all staff members to move to a STEM school model next year. And they are applying for $20,000 through the Governor's Office of Science and Technology to help support that transition. And that concludes my report.
Let's see, on Carson High School, prom is Saturday, April 27th. So those interested, tickets go on sale tomorrow, $40 a person. And the theme is the greatest prom on earth, a night under the big top. So hopefully that doesn't imply it's going to be a circus. Should be. So it should be a lot of fun. I know my daughter's a senior and a lot of her friends are talking about it and getting ready for it, so it should be exciting. If you're interested in Jumpstart Career, the CTE track, applications are available in the guidance office now. Not now, but started today. Senior projects happened yesterday, and those are always exciting. I had the chance to judge a panel, and they really are. I say they get better every year, but they really do. The students just do a fantastic job, and some of them just tackle topics that I'm surprised they tackle these things. I mean, it was really one of them was I felt like it was a bit over my head about psychology and all that, but it was really interesting. So I really enjoyed that. Another student has never cooked. He likes other things, but he decided he wanted to learn how to cook. And so to my happiness, he brought food for us and fed us. So I picked a good track. But anyway, senior projects went really well. Today I had the opportunity to speak in Mr. Lopsinger's class to the manufacturing and engineering students. And again, a nice group of students, a lot of juniors and seniors in there that are either trying to figure out their path after high school or already have it in place. So it was fun to talk to them, and I'll be there again tomorrow. So that concludes my report.
The Carson High School Jazz Band had an opportunity to travel to near Folsom for the Gold Country Jazz Festival this past Saturday, and they received the superior rating, which is the highest rating they could receive. So that was very successful. They just did a day trip. And coming up this week, spring break, I think it's next week, right? I believe. It's going too quickly. The Carson High School robotics team will, and I know they were here, they are finally doing it. They're traveling to the World's Championships in Houston, Texas. They actually leave on Tuesday, and they don't come back till the following Monday, right before school starts. So they'll be there just about a week.
Good luck to them. Thank you. Moving on to number 5, association reports. Miss Loretta.
It's still green. Good. Good evening, Madam President, Trustees, Administration, and Renee back there. My name's Loretta Marson. I'm VP of CESA and the ESPs. I just want to give you the update on our banquet. We call it the ESPY Awards. It will be held Sunday, May 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Macasas 2 on North Carson Street. The banquet is for the winners of the ESPYs of the year. The winners may bring one guest and will receive their gift at the banquet. All dues-paying members can bring one guest too. The cost is free this year. All members going must RVSP Terry Cantley at Transportation. Her email is tcantley@carson.k12.nv.us by May 15th. And of course, all the school board members and administrations are welcome to attend. And Don, you're on board. We're lost your check or wherever it was, but we're fine with that. I said it was in the Bermuda Triangle of the CESA desk. I just wanted to also report on the interviews we did with the classifieds. Dan Davis, our public relations, he headed the group. Paula Bruno, Bev Singleton, Denise Krebs, myself. We were able to interview the best people that work for the district. I mean, if we could give them all an award, they go beyond and be above of classifieds. And it was just amazing to hear some of them going on to continue their education. And Mr. Delphin, you'll be happy to know some of them will be teaching. And so I just wanted to say, it was just such a wonderful experience to hear them and their input that they have on us, the kids, and just their futures. So I just want to say thank you to all the people that were nominated. So thank you.
If I could, I'd also like to just thank all the classified staff for the outstanding job they do and let them know that we haven't overlooked them, that we think about them often, and we appreciate the job they do.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Good evening, Madam President, trustees, Superintendent Stokes, public. Same. It's OCA banquet time. It's always a good time of year because we get to start to wind down and celebrate how everything's been going. So Light of Education Award Banquet will be coming up May 9th. And you each have RSVPs within your board packets. We'll spread you out as best as possible if you choose to attend, so we don't have quorum issues and all that kind of fun stuff. So we hope to see you there. On the other side of the fun at the legislature, NSCA would like to say thank you to you and your work and the attendance in the hearings there. We have a good team effort going with everyone trying to resolve what's going on with the school funding and the multitude of all the other bills that seem to be coming our way. So thank you.
Moving on to number 6, public comment. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of this board. Please note the public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action before the action is taken on such items. And members of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time that they are being considered. Although members of the board may respond with questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at a meeting of the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and identify themselves for the record. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes and simply not repeat comments by others. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to cover me. Number 7, discussion and possible action to approve proposed changes to CCSD policy 510, health examination. Second reading for possible action, Mrs. Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. After the last board meeting, during the last board meeting, there were suggestions to make changes to policy 510. After the draft was created, I resent that out to Mr. Blair Roman, athletic director at the high school, to make sure that he approved of the changes. He verified that the changes were correct and he could support the board policy as written. We also sent it to Sheila Story, who's with us tonight, a head nurse for the district, and she had some additional suggestions, and she and Mr. Pavlakis worked together, and you can see those changes in blue in your board packet. They refer to just some clarification around that physical examination of students. She's here tonight, I think, just dropping by in case there's any questions. If you have any questions or comments, we're ready for those at this time. Otherwise, we are seeking approval.
Just a question I have on clarification on page 2, under the sports physicals, because it does say, and it's clarified, but I'm just wondering if there might be I don't know, because it says the first practice in every 2 years thereafter, and then you skip down and the next red says students that participate in sanctioned sports in middle school must submit to physical examination, and students who participate in high school must submit to physical every 2 years. My understanding is the middle school one is good, but middle school is 3 years long, so I just don't want it to be then where we've got middle schoolers needing one in 6th grade and in 8th grade if they need it just once. So how to make sure we word that not every 2 years?
So do you want to split that sentence? Thus, students who participate in sanctioned sports in middle school must submit a physical or must submit a physical once during their middle school years, something like that?
Maybe
And
add
then
that
the second
sentence at that, and then high school every 2 years prior to the, I don't know. I just, to me, it would be, you can read it and say, okay, middle schoolers need to have it everyone needs to have it 2 years. And if it is only just 1 year during the 3 years of middle school, then I don't want it to do that, so.
Sure. I mean, when we're reading this and we practice it, we live it, it's good to have people, with a third point to look at this. So we could certainly make that change. Students who participate in sanctioned sports must submit to a physical once during their middle school years. And then the second sentence could be students who participate in sports in high school must submit a physical every 2 years.
Yeah.
Take out that and.
And I'm fine with that. I wanted to just ask the question, is 3 years inadequate? Is that too long?
For middle school?
Well, for middle school, I'm just thinking if a kid had a physical coming into 6th grade and then had a health issue or something happened to him in 8th grade, would that open up some liability for us?
This is Sheila Story, the chief nurse for the school district, and this is an NIAA question, I believe. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're required to have a physical each year due to the change in their bodies and any type of physical or medical changes they might have. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Parker has had to get a physical each year, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, to participate in athletics at middle school. But I think we need to clarify that with Blair Roman and/or the NIAA.
Okay.
But I don't think the NIAA has any regulations over middle school.
They don't.
Because
With
we've
the
had
Tawneva League.
those questions before.
Oh, the Tawneva League, yeah.
Yeah, it's a
maybe ask
Tawneva League. And I know Blair looked at this and he said that everything was correct, the way we had it written. And I know Mr. Wallace has coached in the past. Do you have any recollection? I mean, I know I should have this prepared here, but I thought our athletic director.
Okay.
Brian Wallace, the Eagle Valley's cross-country coach, and also Tawneva officer. I do not recall anything in the Tawneva League rules that dictates anything to deal with a physical. I believe that has always been up to the districts, because you're assuming the liability at the middle school level, and it's not the same level as competition as you see at the high school level, and it's not as severe maybe. I know for this year that once a child in the middle school level has a physical, if they get one in 6th grade, then it's just an update for 7th and 8th grade is what we have been following. But I do not know where that came down from. If that was a district from the district to our athletic director, and then to us as coaches, that part I'm unaware of. And for the 10-ish years I've been coaching, I've just followed what our athletic director said to do is kids need a physical on file, then they need the update on file, then I get a copy of the contact information, so that way I have it with me when I travel.
What is the update? Because I'm just thinking, I know for the Register My Athlete for high schoolers, you have the actual physical that's all turned in, and then you have to update it that it's still on file for the 2nd year, and then their 3rd year, you need to resubmit and go back to the doctor again. So at least if my current middle schooler doesn't do sports, but my ones before, I think they only needed it once, and then it was just like, oh yeah, they've already had one. And so there wasn't any need to go back and have another exam.
And probably the updates were making sure, Susan Kima for the record, probably making sure they had the current address and phone number contact information.
And most likely if they've changed doctors or anything along those lines, so when we do travel, I have all of that with me.
This is Sheila Story for the record. I know at Carson High, they have a physical form, which is Form D, and then they have a health history form, which is Form B. The physical form has to be filled out every 2 years, which is Form D, and Form B has to be filled out every single year. So if there's any type of medical changes, then we know about those medical changes. So I just follow the forms at Carson High School and turn them into Carson Middle School for Parker, just so they have all the updated information. And I just go to that physical at Carson High in June and get them a physical each year to make sure we're current.
I have a question. I'm wondering, kids go through a lot of changes in the middle school years, and so I'm not sure why we would say every 2 years with high school age students and not with middle school age students. Why there would be a difference is kind of confusing to me, especially knowing that usually kids start to rapidly change in 6th, 7th grade, and, I think that we would want to make sure that we're covering our bases.
It is.
To register my athlete for middle school, because that is a big online thing that the high school's been using, and I think the middle school just did it this year, which I didn't have to fill that out for one of mine, but that may be something if that's do we want that policy that middle schoolers have it, or that every student has it every 2 years? And if it's a middle schooler who doesn't compete in 6th grade but gets it in 7th grade, it's good for 8th grade. If they do it 6th, 7th, and 8th, then they need one in 6th and one in 8th.
And that may be part of the issues also, is that you only, at the 6th grade level, you only have 2 sports that are truly open to 6th grade, which is cross country and track. And so that may be why one physical is good for the 3 years versus moving into high school. Plus, we don't have the NIAA to have to deal with. And the Neva League is very much just all the coaches coming together saying, we'll run a league. And it's competitive, but it's not competitive. So we're not probably as worried about all the regulations NIA has, because we don't have the NCAA looking at us either. We're just our own nice little closet over here away from a lot of this. And again, like as a coach, we just take direction that comes down through our athletic director, which for us is our vice principal at Eagle Valley.
I kind of agree with Mr. Walker, maybe every 2 years. I think just they are changing a lot during those years, and just to be safe, I think every 2 years, that would be my thought.
Susan Kima for the record, and also keep in mind, each year when the parent does their registration update, as well as the nurses have their information as far as medical updates to have on file, as long as the families are willing to disclose that. The school does have a regular system for updates as far as medical information.
This is Sheila Story. We also do check those each year. We download them, check them, and add any type of new medical information to Infinite Campus. With that being said, at the least, I think we should get an updated health history form in regards to their condition if they are going to do any type of sport in the middle school. And I'm proactive for physicals, but that's me.
And, now that I'm hearing that they've gone to the My Athlete for middle school, that might have been a natural process between the coaches that generally I'm not involved in, that there might be, because of that system, there'll be a natural place for the updates.
And that's where the middle school might require a little more discussion to flesh out, because again, we get directions from either your athletic director and then the secretary, who usually is assigned within the office to handle that material, and then it's passed along to us. So I've never had access to register my athlete. Again, once I submit the list to the office who's coming out for cross country, then they send me the paperwork and everything and let me know that we're good on our end, and then off I go.
And I I guess my concern with the middle school is a lot of parents don't know about the night that the high school physicals are offered, and I just, sometimes that's an expense for middle school parents to do, because if you don't get it with your well check, but you need it to compete in a sport, then sometimes that's an extra expense that isn't covered always by insurance. So I don't want to, I'd rather kids get out and run cross country and track and do that, but also you want to be aware of any conditions that are there. So I don't know what the answer is on that.
Well, I know we have the registration updates each year. We know that there's limited sports opportunities for the middle schoolers in sixth grade. And their seasons are way shorter, much shorter as far as the duration. And back in the dark ages, when I was the athletic director over at Eagle Valley, it was a once a year thing, one time in the middle school experience because of that. But I didn't want to make sure, that's why I checked with Mr. Wallace to make sure where they're at. And I know Mr. Roman approved this, so.
And I guess I'm just a little bit sensitive to it because we have sixth graders at my school, and one of the boys on cross country, he had a heart condition that popped up. And so I just want to make sure, I mean, even if it's a shorter section, sixth graders, it's our first time getting out there. I think we just want to make sure that we're covered. We don't want any kids to get injured because they're participating in school sports. We want to do our due diligence, and I think that that's what we're all communicating, really.
And we also have one time in middle school, a screening.
Correct, yeah.
Based on the first part of this policy.
So real quick, in middle school, number one, seventh graders are required to have their Tdap and the meningococcal. So we're hoping, excuse me, that at that well child check, where they're receiving those vaccinations, that they are also getting a well child check. And if they are participating in a sport, possibly they would take the sport form with them. And or if they've had that well child check earlier in the year and then they're going to run track, the doctor might be willing and able to fill out the sports physical form since they have been seen and they have had a well child check with the updated immunizations. So, and then also in sixth and seventh grade, depending on, I believe one school does seventh grade, school does sixth grade, we do the health screenings of vision, hearing, and scoliosis. And of course, if we see any issue or concern, we then do report it and refer it to the family to follow up with their physician.
So I get a feeling that we're okay with the 2 years. And then maybe we can have Dan Sadler work on letting the middle schoolers know that we have that free, well, no, I mean, that we have the sports, the PR guy, let him know about that so that he can get the word, Dan Davis, sorry. Man, it's been a long day. The PR, and I'm the one that wanted him, so. Maybe we can work on that aspect of trying to get more kids into that so that they can get those physicals, and if they want them more than one every other year or whatever, and just stick with what it's at, unless anybody has some big problems with that.
No, and I just have one. And I just wanted to say, Mrs. Kimo, reading through this, it was easier to follow the second time, so thanks for the revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlakis. And Sheila.
Any more discussion? Any discussion from the public? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the April 9, 2019 as a revised date for the CCSD policy 510 required health examinations and sports physicals. With, well,
We didn't make
we didn't make any edits. We're leaving it the way it is.
With the other 2 years. Yeah. Second by Dawn, motion by Joe. Any other discussion on the motion?
So I wanted to clarify because I was thinking we were changing it so that the middle schools said every 2 years as well. So are we leaving it the way it was, or?
It says on, it says each student who wishes to participate in any sanctioned sport for the first time must, prior to the first practice session and every 2 years thereafter, submit a physical examination.
So, but the second, after the A and B, and the second part where that sentence where it's read, thus students who participate in sanctioned sports in middle school must submit to a physical examination, and students who participate in sports in high school must submit to a physical every 2 years. Have them both do, or is it okay that they must submit to a physical examination? And if it's every 2 years, if they get it in 6th grade, then they should get it in 8th grade, but if they don't start doing sports till 7th grade, then they're good.
So while we know they're not being governed, the middle school's not being governed by the NIAA, which is, I'm thinking, the lens that, I can't speak for him, but maybe that's the lens that Mr. Roman is looking through. I know that the Neva League has their own policies, if you will, and maybe we could say something like, that once every 2 years or as required by Neva League requirements or something like that, unless you want to go above and beyond that. Or another option is to have me bring this back with that one point cleared up.
Yeah,
I'd rather, if we leave it open, I'd rather not leave it open to an outside organization to determine that. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather have it cleared up and.
Yeah, that was, when I first brought it up, that was my thought, was I wasn't so much concerned about, our governing regulations there. It was just more directly the health of the students and our liability as such. 3 years at that age is a long time.
And knowing the Neva League, that it truly is just coaches and they come and go kind of quickly and such, I don't think we're truly equipped. And as a coach for you, I would be more comfortable following you. So if 1 year isn't acceptable and the impact you're looking at is my cross-country team, as an example, runs 15 to 30. Track runs about 100. So you're looking at 130 kids impacted, but then you look at just the 6th graders that would attend that, then it shrinks even smaller. You wind up with 5 or 6 6th graders in cross-country and about 20. So they would be your 20 to 30 that would fall into that 2-year range of needing to renew it for our 8th grade. Which then depending upon where they do it within 8th grade, and if it was some collaboration with the high school program on their sports night, that may work out perhaps.
Mr. Stokes?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I was hoping that we actually had a Regulation 510 on this topic, which may have identified further, and Mrs. Kima already knew that. But I was hoping that we could do as she had suggested, which is bring this back after maybe looking or considering a potential regulation for 510. And we can do some more homework and bring this back so that it's clear to everyone, and bring it at our next, probably 2 meetings, because our next meeting is the 23rd, which is our employee recognition board meeting.
Is there any deadline on this that if delaying it would cause a problem?
No deadline.
Okay.
Another option is to put the 2 years in and then I bring it back if there needs to be something different. But I think the conservative approach is just to leave it open and have me go out and work with Mr. Roman and the coaches to see. There might be some
Principals at
reasons
the
because
middle
I don't work
schools
with this on a daily basis or
They might know more.
some way of making sure that they've got updates on the students that I'm not maybe aware of.
And I think that's good, because we should have time. The school year's coming to an end, not gearing up, so, we have plenty of time to figure this out.
Anybody who's in a sport is now in that spring sport.
So we do have a motion on the floor, so I'm going to go ahead and we can call for a vote, and if it doesn't pass, then it can go back to staff, I think is the way to look at this.
Or can he withdraw his motion?
Can you withdraw?
Can withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to withdraw my motion and give staff an opportunity to look into this further and bring it back to us for further discussion and potential approval.
And is a second? Okay.
I'll withdraw my second. I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so motion is withdrawn. We will have staff work on the improvements and bring it back in May. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going on to number 8, discussion and possible action to approve proposed changes to CCSD policy 546, cell phone usage. Second reading for possible action. Mrs. Kima.
Susan Kima for the record. Suggestions from the previous board meeting are noted in red in the policy 546. Previous discussion centered around students videotaping or audio taping each other in locker rooms and in restaurants. So we added in that piece on the front page. Also, we do have an audience for the board meeting. So while I was presenting this policy to you at the last meeting, Mr. Raymond Medeiros, who's our director of the Tech and Innovation Department, was texting me, even though my phone was over there, to share with the board that we have referenced the same piece regarding capturing audio or video recordings in policy 218, internet safety and network acceptable use. So I need to thank Mr. Medeiros to remind me about that particular policy. Second page, the district, we also added that the district is not to be held liable or responsible for damage, lost, or stolen privately owned electronic property. Just a disclaimer there. At this time, if we don't have any additional changes, I recommend approval.
Any discussion, comments on this?
Just a quick question. Where's the footnote 1, or is that just a note? Is there any, because I'm scanning through and I'm not seeing it up above. Where? I know it's on the bottom, but where in the text does the 1 go to?
It would be on the red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down in the red. The use of electronic devices capable of capturing audio is there. But also, some of this others is inferred into that policy, but we probably should have the number 1 in that. That's what we're saying. Yeah.
Just to reference it, and it could even be at the end of the first paragraph. Or, sorry, I had my mic off. Sorry, Renee. Could it just even be at the first paragraph? At the end of the first paragraph that, because this is addressing personal devices, and we have another policy that deals with, I don't know.
I think that's a good suggestion.
So I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve April 9, 2019 as a revised date for CCSD Policy 546, electronic device usage, with the correction noted.
Second.
Any public comment on this motion or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Thank you.
On to number 9, discussion of proposed changes to CCSD regulation 903, process for resolving complaints for discussion. Thank you. Discussion on proposed.
President Swarsik, your mic isn't on.
I miss him. I have to remind myself every once in a while, I guess. Discussion on proposed changes to CCSD Regulation 903, process for resolving complaints for discussion only. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Nice little flashback there. This particular item is a regulation and doesn't require board approval. However, it's good that we have an opportunity to review and discuss all of our policies and regulations occasionally. It's been some time since Regulation 903 has been reviewed, and I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Pavlakis for his eyes on this as well. With the majority of the change coming with the addition of a paragraph, and it is in bold at the bottom of the first page, and it reads, regardless of the outcome of the public complaint, no school-related retaliation or reprisal of any kind will be permitted against the student, person or family making the complaint unless the persons who made the report acted with malice, intentional misconduct, gross negligence, or intentional violation of the law. Often we have people who make complaints who are worried about reprisals, and it was important that we add this language so that people are able to feel confident that they have an avenue for resolving issues with our operations. So I present this and the other changes for your consideration and discussion while we're here this evening.
I talked to Mr. Stokes about this also. I'm in the second to last paragraph on the first page. I just suggested we clean it up a little bit. So following such an investigation as he or she deems appropriate, I think we could put the superintendent in there, take out the he or she in the deem. I think it's just, it could make it confusing, and I want to make sure that the people who are using this policy or wanting to come forward, it's very clear to them what the procedure is and that it's the superintendent who's making that decision and not the person complaining, I guess.
Anyone else? The only thing I want, maybe after I was reading this the second time, is on the second page, and it tells if it goes to the board and a request for consideration by the Board of Trustees. Should it say somewhere in there that is the process, if they get the complaint and it's sent to the board, is it sent to all 7 of us? Or do we need it just sent to the president and the clerk, or I mean, I don't know what the process is.
Madam President, I can tell you that I try really hard to not have it come back to the board. I'm sure, however.
I don't know the process.
There may be times where this does happen, but to this point, we haven't had that occur. Because I think this document also says that if that does happen, they're going to be asked to come back and meet with the superintendent and try to resolve it anyway. Otherwise, we have a condition where now we're trying to resolve something in a public forum, which is not in the best interest of anyone, I don't think.
Okay, seeing none, well, thank you for the update, we appreciate it. And now for the item everybody's been waiting for tonight. Number 10, presentation and discussion of the tentative budget for the Carson City School District for fiscal year 2019-2020. Mr. Fueling, we're making you a regular agenda item.
I appreciate that, Trustee Cassioppo. Oh, hang on. Got to turn that on. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I sure don't feel that way most days the last couple months. But thank you. So the tentative budget has been included in your packets. It, for the most part, represents what was discussed every time we met over the past 3 months. I think we've had budget discussions each month and have made some adjustments, and then specifically ones that were presented at the last board meeting. So I'm going to talk about 2 specific adjustments to the general fund number that have come since the last meeting, just so we're of the same understanding of what you're seeing. And then really talk about some of the other funds, because we have spent so much time talking about the general fund, and there's a whole lot of other, you've 19 other funds that you're also responsible for. So we'll talk a little bit about those and just kind of see where we go from there. I left this in from last time to look at the different, I still can't get over this. Sorry. Yeah. I guess as an update to this, there was a letter that we helped create and signed off on between Churchill, Carson City, and Elko, talking about these changes with the funding for next year and asking the legislators for help in moving forward towards some type of hold harmless. So we're still awaiting kind of feedback on that from them, but just as a kind of update of where we are related to that. So for the tentative budget being presented here today, just a reminder that this is for discussion and input, but not for approval. The only time the board approves a budget is when it's what we call the original final budget, which is at the budget hearing in May, and then anytime there's an amended budget or augmented, and there actually is a difference, then the board would approve, but a tentative budget is not for approval. So I will, once we talk about this evening, I'll be presenting that to the Department of Taxation. And then it's really, after discussion tonight and any discussion at the next, really the first board meeting in May, we'll make some adjustments if necessary, and then that would be presented to you on the 28th for approval at the official budget hearing. So just looking at the general fund, again, this is the same slide from last time we met, just again, kind of perspective of what we were looking at. So originally we were expecting a $4.7 million deficit if we flat funded ourselves from this current year to the next year. And then we received the updated funding amount from NDE, which reduced the revenues again by another $1 million. So it turned it into a $5.7 million deficit. And so from there, direction was to try to bring that at least down to about $3 million. And we went through what that looked like, how we would get there at the last meeting. So the adjustment then really in that bottom half, so the total reduction in the deficit was we reduced it by about $3 million, so it got it down from 5.7 to $2.7 million. Since then, to the in putting together the final document, one of the pieces within the Chromebook replacement, it's normally right around $500,000. The exception that I didn't catch right away when going through that was every 4 years, we have planned to replace all of Pioneer High School. So for the middle schools and for Carson High School, we just replace one grade level each year. Pioneer having a little bit of a different population as far as the ages, it doesn't really work. So Pioneer in general, their freshman class is somewhere between like 10 and 15 kids. But by the time you get to the junior and senior class, you have about 50, 55, 60 kids. So just replacing the freshman class each year doesn't really work for them to get kids all the way through with Chromebooks. So Mr. Medeiros and I just came up, kind of the way we'd handle it is just replacing the whole school, basically about 180 Chromebooks every 4 years altogether. So the whole school gets replaced. And that is pegged for this coming year at this point. So that added about $50,000 in costs to the Chromebook costs. The other thing I did, we've talked about before, how we don't, when we budget for staffing costs, we don't actually budget the full 100% amount of every single position being filled. And the idea is, and this is common across medium to larger size entities, that you are going to have vacancies, you're going to have turnover where you're not filling positions right away. So there's always going to be a little bit of a lag or a discount to that. And this year, that number, I brought it down a little bit more, and it's so close to being right, it's kind of scary. And I don't really feel comfortable using that kind of percentage I'm at going into next year, because if it's wrong, it's kind of a tough spot for us to be in, and we can't really be wrong. We can't have it be over budget on that. So this is revising that a little bit, and it adds a little bit back to the budget in case especially if we do have a better year filling vacancies, that it will be necessary to have that extra there. So that together adds back about $200,000 in costs. So instead of having a $2.7 million projected deficit, it brings it to $2.9 million. So it's obviously not the direction I would like that to move. However, it's still less than the kind of $3 million goal of deficit, at least to bring back to you. So that's really, maybe I'll just stop there for now, and we can come back to this later, but everything else is talking about other funds. Are there any specific questions about the general fund, or you can wait till the end to ask as well? We can always come back if there's just any clarifications.
I guess I have a question is, in your professional opinion, in Mr. Stokes' opinion, is this enough at this point? We're taking a conservative, as a board, we're looking at the conservative approach, knowing that there's a lot we don't know, and we aren't gonna know until well after this process is completed. But is this enough at this point as the two people we're looking to for guidance on this?
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Madam President, members of the board, I am not comfortable with having this big of a deficit. However, Mr. Fueling indicated that we still have a lot that we don't know. I attended our superintendent's meeting on Thursday of last week. We had our new state superintendent attend. She was very engaged in our discussion. She listened intently, took a lot of notes as we talked about some of the challenges that we were facing, especially with regard to the budget. She asked for our help. She asked to suggest individuals that we might know who would be school individuals that might consider her vacant position of Deputy Superintendent of Finance, someone who knows the state system well enough that they could come in and help correct some of the difficult situations that we've been dealing with. We told her specifically at that meeting on Thursday that with this correction that took away from us that $138 per student and added the extra $1 million loss of revenue was really hurting us and at least 8 other school districts. We are hoping that there's some discussion which may yet come about to correct that, which would take that $2.9 million projected deficit and reduce that by a full $1 million, and that would be a number that I would be more comfortable in accepting. So again, we're in this really bizarre place of not knowing full well what's going to happen. Our next meeting is the 23rd of April. We have to have teachers' letters of intent delivered by the 1st of May. Otherwise, those teachers will have the right to assume that they have a job next year, and those will be positions that we'll be accountable for. in the coming school year. So this is really a tough call. The $2.9 million is a high number, and one more year in that particular situation is not tenable for our school district. So I didn't really answer your question directly, but I know that we still have a little time to hope for some additional information from our state leaders. And under that condition, I would like for us to not jump to an immediate conclusion right now. And if we had to, we could still call an additional meeting should we need that in order to make a change to our final budget in May.
If I could too, so the new state superintendent has been in office less than a week and has, I don't know if it's due to that, the letter that Churchill, Elko, and Carson all signed off on regarding the hold harmless phase-in, but she's already scheduled a conference call with all the finance folks from all the districts to talk about funding. So I don't know, I don't have any more details on that, but that's next week scheduled for. So, it's all running kind of close here timeline wise, but I don't think the story is finished yet. And I'm getting that from a couple angles, but just the fact that she's already reached out to us makes me feel that there is some hope, some reason that's going to be considered in this process.
If we don't get additional funding, is there plans to make further reductions in place? If needed, I should add.
Sure. Are you thinking of for in the next year or?
Well, my concern about waiting until next year is that it's going to be compounded. Next year, it's going to be a lot higher. Next year, instead of a $2.9 million, we're probably looking at closer to $4 million just by the roll-up in cost, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in there. I'm talking about if we had to cut or reduce more this year, is there plans in place for that?
We do have some other ideas for continuing cuts, and we're still looking at some of the different departments and the way things are done there, and are there more efficiencies that maybe are more efficient ways to do some things. I think it's important, kind of what Mr. Soak said, it's just really important, whatever, and what you said, Mr. Varner, to understand that if the numbers that we have from ND are correct, I mean, you can almost look at it like your revenue, even though that per pupil number is down, if you just think of it as your revenue basically staying flat. But on the expense side, you have a large compounding really due from staffing costs. It's what happens. And that would lead to an even larger deficit that next year. So I think it's important for the kind of long-term fiscal health of the district to understand that if whatever you go with this year, if the revenue side doesn't improve, it's going to look bad again next year. And what will be really nice about next year is you will know the revenue number. We will know that number. But I think because you know that number, the conversation will be different about what are you willing to look at for a budget. Because I don't think you want to do that 2 years in a row. That's just not going to put you in a good spot.
If I might add one other thought, and of course, every day our staffing picture changes. We receive letters of resignation. We receive notice that people are going to retire. And so we hold some of those keys looking into the future. And so if we have, let's just say 20 vacancies, and we know approximately how much those 20 vacancies are worth. And if we chose to only fill, let's just say, 15 of those vacancies out of the 20, then there's a savings of at least 5 positions that we can create by not filling those positions. And so if that means that we have to do that by some other way, we can take a look at that. So no matter what you do in a situation where you have to reduce staff, you're either giving up a program or you're making a conscious decision to raise classroom sizes. And so by waiting as long as we can without damaging our operations, it gives us just that, we get that much closer, I guess, to trying to make as good of a decision as we possibly can. So this is not something that is clear in all aspects, just because, we're still trying to accomplish some of the things that we started with Race to the Top. We're trying to finish out some of our curriculum, our assessment pieces, and we've got key people in those positions. And so to the best extent possible, we're trying to see some of those things through, but obviously not at the expense of putting the school district in danger from a fiscal perspective. So that's why we're, I guess, trying to play for enough time that we can make a decision based on what we learn from our lawmakers.
And I know so much of it is hypothetical, but knowing we have to have these big decisions made by the beginning of May in our limited schedule, maybe you're gonna hear something next week, maybe you're not, but I mean, how quick could we get on getting a emergency meeting together or a special meeting together of the board to consider some of these things? Because one of the things I'm afraid of, so the next meeting is the awards assembly, which is, we're celebrating staff, and I don't think any of us want to change that or turn that into a business meeting, but we also have to be prepared to take this information, and I'd say move quickly if we need to.
Well, according to the open meeting law, we need 3 business days to post a meeting. And once we do that and post that agenda, that would be really all the time that we needed. And we have to do those 3 days on days that are not considered holidays.
And I guess if it is a concern, we could always have the awards and then have the business meeting afterwards. I mean, it's not like we haven't gone till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. If you feel that if we have new information or something's changed, we'd have to know a week ahead of time so that we can post that on the agenda along with the awards part. But if you feel like if you want another meeting, we can definitely do that. We can have that meeting there afterwards. It's just that we wouldn't do it first.
Right. And I guess I'm not necessarily advocating for that. I'm just advocating for us to be responsive. I'm just saying we're kind of limited on time. And unfortunately, I won't be in attendance at the next meeting just because I'll have another meeting I'm going to for my employer. But I just want to make sure that I'm on top of this just as a concerned board member, so.
If I could, Stacy, I will not be able to make the next board meeting either. On the 23rd, I'm out of town.
Probably
So
wouldn't
it
wanna
might be
add
better
anything
to
to
have a
that
different date if we
agenda.
could. Because I'd definitely like to have some input.
And another thing you have to look at too with this timeline that we've been allowed now, we used to have it all done by May 15th. That was the date. Now we have until the 25th. So we actually have 10 extra days that we haven't had in the past, so.
But we have the teachers' letters that go out May 1st,
May
right?
1st, yeah.
It's complicated.
And that's, my thought is if things don't get better and we have to look at, okay, what else, I do see us probably needing more than a meeting, because you're gonna come back to us and you're gonna say, okay, here's the situation. Here's what we're recommending. We're gonna have some new questions that you may or may not be prepared to answer at that time. So I'm anticipating, we're gonna need two meetings to figure anything out as we go forward. So just, I'm not advocating when we should meet, but we just want to make sure we have that built into the plan.
Well, and I think we want to, I want to make sure that we're smart about our approach. And like I said, I don't think I don't believe we're going to have, I don't believe it's going to be this bleak. However, I've been wrong before and I wouldn't bet money on that. And so I just want to make sure that we're supporting our employees and we're also looking out for this school district, which is our job. And I think we have to be responsive and do it wisely.
No, I agree. Thing worries me is, the article that came out in the paper where the person who's pushing this new formula stated that the pie was not going to be any bigger. It was just going to be split up differently. And so that leads me to believe, if they've had discussions, that they're not really planning on giving the districts a lot more money.
Yeah, that was a really disappointing quote to read. I mean, just everything that we have been through in regards to getting ready for this new model, it was clear to everybody that this was going to cost money. I mean, there was no question about that. And so to read that, I mean, based on how that model allocates money, it's really looking much more at students, student demographics, and that clearly ends up then, if you're not changing the pie, it just pushes more money to Clark and Washoe, basically. So, yeah, that was not the quote I was expecting to read in that.
So we have a Thursday after that. Would you guys be able to make that? We could have a board workshop because we're not going to have any action. Could we have a board workshop instead of having a?
About May 25th?
No, April.
Oh, April 25th, yeah.
25th. Because you want it before May 1st.
Would that give the district time to look at letters of intent or anything if we needed to do that, if we had a meeting at that point?
Yes, that would still give us the time. I mean, we could be ready for anything, knowing that that would be a proposed meeting night. We would just have to go through the details, like I say, of putting the agenda together and posting it correctly.
To be prepared.
That seems to be the feeling of the board. I think everybody would feel more comfortable with that. So if everybody can make it on the 28th?
On the 28th, yes, definitely.
Or 25th?
Yes,
I'm
28th
confused.
I believe I'll be back in town by then, yes.
I work Sunday. Make any difference for me. So the 25th, so everybody could be there. And maybe we could have it like at 6 instead of 7. Okay.
Okay, then if there's no other questions related to the general fund, I'll move on to some of the others. If you have questions, you think of something at the end, obviously feel free to ask. It's your meeting. So moving on, so that budget document that you received, while it is packed with exciting numbers and 70 pages of them almost, in fact, it makes a fantastic doorstop when you're done looking at it. It represents 20 funds altogether. So the general fund is the one that we talk about the most, obviously, and it's the one that you are judged by, I would say, to a great extent. But there's a lot of other things that are happening within the school district, and all those different funds are used in different ways. And some are larger and kind of more impactful than others. But so I'm just gonna walk through a couple of the ones that I specifically pointed out in the executive summary. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're kind of at a place where we normally are with those funds. They all have generally some different funding streams that are their resource, but we don't usually at this time of year know exactly what that resource is going to look like. Once we get to May, usually we have a better idea. So the first one is the class size reduction fund. Fund 210. This is specifically decided by the enrollment. For us, it's grades 1 through 5 that impact that funding across the district. We don't know our enrollment yet for next year because we haven't started, but we do have projections. And so using what's projected, I try to come up with what I think that number will be. That fund is important though, because it is one of the several funds that if the costs are not covered, it takes a transfer from the general fund to cover the rest of it. Class size reduction goes back to, I believe it started in 1988. And the idea was trying to lower the class sizes, and they looked at what the class sizes were back in actually it was an average of 1988 through I think 1990. And then they said, okay, so on average, this was your class size. We're gonna benchmark that now in every district. We're gonna fund you to get from that benchmark number, which has never changed since 1988, 1990, to get that down to the goal size. And it calculates, basically says, here's how many teachers you would need to do that. And then it says, here's what those teachers cost. And that they multiply that out, and that's how you generate the funding. So it never actually covers the cost of getting the class sizes down to what they need to be, because we are held to that standard at the school level, but based on the actual school enrollments, but it gets funded based on your district, your district-wide enrollment and basing the average off of that. And that never ends up being the same thing. So it's always there's always some transfer from the general fund, just some years are better than others. But as of right now, there is the kind of the estimated transfers in there. Hopefully, usually by the end of May, we have the first estimated number that the state will give us, and we run with that until we get into the new year, and then we'll get a final number. Adult ed and adult ed correctional, also known as prison ed. We still do not know what our funding will be for those programs. The last number of years, specifically prison ed, has been reduced pretty dramatically. This last year it did tick up again, and I believe my understanding is that it's expected the funding is going to go up for both of those in this session. So we're waiting to see what that is. But that for now, I'm just using the funding from the current year as what we're expecting for the next year, and that's pretty based on historical looks. That's pretty reasonable. It usually doesn't change all that much. So, special education fund, we still don't know that amount based on what the historical factor is and the number of students we have. I have I think a rounded number in there for what I think the revenue, the aid will be for special education, but that fund, like class size reduction, is really important in that the aid that we receive for the state doesn't even come close to the costs of providing special education services. So it requires a transfer from the general fund to pay for that. So the more aid we get, the better, and it helps reduce the transfer from the general fund.
And
Yep.
that was a big discussion at the National School Board Convention, because that's their advocacy, because the IDEA is up right now. So there's a big push by the national effort to get more money at the federal level, and hopefully it'll trickle down to the states, so.
It would be really nice if, really, special education is driven by federal law and federal, Supreme Court cases and things like that. And if the feds would recognize how expensive that program is that they effectively have kind of created to help states, and really the districts are ultimately getting that money from the state. If they would get more money to the states to help them offset that cost for the districts, that would make a huge difference from everybody. But it is very expensive, and I don't know, you're never quite sure how that's going to play out at the federal level. The one that's a little more complicated, and there's a little more meat to it, is the capital projects and bond funds. Sorry. Yeah, right. It's my 30 minutes. So with that, I guess we're done. There's kind of an awkward estimation that goes on with the capital projects and bond funds. So as a school district, we try as much as possible to have projects go on during the summer without kids around, right? But you have our fiscal year ends on June 30th, and you have a new year starting on July 1st. So you're trying to figure out, well, we want to make sure we have enough budget authority to fund everything that we're going to get invoiced for before June, or for work before June 30th. But then you have to have enough budget authority in the new year for when those next invoices come for work completed after July 1st. So what you're going to see is some projects in the current year, like Mark Twain and Fremont are really the two where we're expecting. I think we had almost $5 million budgeted for each one in the current year, but you're going to see that in the new year, I have authority, I think, of $2 million for each project. And so it seems like there's really $7 million of authority, and it's not. It's just recognizing that some parts of the project, hopefully around like 3 million of it, will be recognized as an expense in the current fiscal year. But then there's going to be a lot still happening after July 1st in the summer, and there's still going to be more invoices to pay at that point. So in total, the projects will still be about $5 million, but you just have to be able to juggle that a little bit. One thing you'll notice too, so the capital improvement plan is a part of this document. I believe it's page 55. I don't have it. It's over there, but it's okay. In that document, really the Facilities Master Planning Committee, going back 3-4 years ago, helped kind of guide what projects would be in there. And since then, we haven't gone back to talk about that. So for the most part, the projects are ones that have been in the document, and they just keep moving over a year as we go along. So one of the projects that's listed for this coming year is building basically half of a school. I don't believe we've had the discussions to really say, yeah, we're doing that at this point, but all I'm doing is moving it over. So that isn't, we have no expectation, we would not be able to do that unless we went through some significant authorizations from you. So I don't want you to think that because that's there, that somehow this is just going to happen without any further discussion. The other larger projects there, for the elementary schools working on their IT, their like wireless networks, upgrading all of that across. We've already done that at the secondary schools, but the next step is then doing it at the elementary schools. So that's in there as well. And then I think another year or two down the road is replacing the football field, artificial turf on the football field. That's kind of the last major project that was discussed. And that has to go through every summer. Mark Hornick goes through and has it cleaned, and they get kind of a feedback from the company that does that on how it's holding up. And if it's doing well, that's great. And if it's getting up in age now, so we're hoping it can last. It's been in the 2022 slot ever since we started this, and hopefully it can last long. And if not, we're going to have to do some juggling with that. The other thing that's in there is we had initially talked about another bond issuance, and really as of October this year, we could issue another bond for at least $20 million, and that's really how you would build that half school. But the way we'd almost had that as a placeholder, and that we were assuming we'd go with that bond, but that half of a school would be all in on that bond funding. We wouldn't have any money left for anything else at all. And so I don't know if that's reasonable considering we have other needs in the district. But I do have that $20 million in there. It's really, at this point, Marty Johnson is going to be coming to the Bond Oversight Committee meeting in May. But it's looking to be a little bit more than that, just with property tax revenues increasing over time, probably closer to 22 to 23 million dollars. So if we would decide to do that, and we may need to for different reasons than just building a new school, that at that time we'd talk a little bit more about it.
If we didn't bond in 2019, is Marty going to go over what our options would be, how much more money would be available and when? Okay.
Yeah, so, and I asked him specifically to look at, kind of a all-in, what would it look like if we just bonded for everything we could, for the most part, without doing anything too creative and crazy with the financing. And then also looking at maybe a smaller issuance here this year to do maybe a couple projects that aren't quite that expensive, and then to see what would be available then, say, 5 years from now when we could do another larger issuance. So he's trying to put together a couple scenarios for us. So he'll present those when he's here. One thing that we've really struggled with, and I know you've heard it many times and over the past 2 years, but the costs of construction have risen at a rate far exceeding normal inflation, and to the point where, initially 3 years ago, when we were planning out the Pioneer and the Mark Twain and the Fremont projects, we had them all pegged with quite a bit of cushion as being $4 million projects, and they're all now going to be over $5 million. So keeping up with the cost of construction has been really difficult. I believe that, and I have some more work to do on this, but we will, my recommendation would be that we access what's called the pay-as-you-go funding. And so pay-as-you-go funding, basically within your debt service fund, which is where we collect all of our property tax revenues that we use to pay down all of our bonds. The reserve you have to have in that fund, and reserve is basically saying like fund balance. The fund balance you have to have in there must be 50% of whatever your expenditures are going to be that year. That's a requirement. And so if you have more in your reserves than that 50% amount, that amount is available as what they call pay-as-you-go funding. And you can use that excess to fund capital project type items. So we would it would end up being a transfer from that Fund 400 debt service fund to the capital projects fund, and then you could use that to fund various capital projects. We actually have, over the next couple of years, quite a bit of pay-as-you-go funding that will become available, and it's because we have some bonds falling off. So we really don't want to access a large amount of it because we'll ultimately be using that for this new bond that we're going to pay for. But in talking with Marty, if it was about like $250,000, it really wouldn't impact our bonding capacity a great deal. So he was pretty comfortable with that. There's still some more work to do on my side to finalize that amount. But that's what I'm looking at right now to help cover some of these final costs, really from the Mark Twain and Fremont projects and Pioneer being significantly more than we anticipated. And that's all I have for you.
Are you praying we don't have any more questions?
You know what, Mr. Walker, honestly, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the questions. I realize that you all don't take this lightly, and you shouldn't, and you're asking good questions. So I honestly appreciate that. So thank you.
Any other questions? VJ? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 11, approval of the consent agenda.
I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Joe, and second by Lupe. And for the record, I have a pecuniary interest in number A, so I will not be voting on this. So all those in favor? What? Public comment. Public comment? she left. Any other discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? Approved. Moving on to 12, informational items for discussion only. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Stokes of any of these?
I just wanted to say thank you, though, for the 2019 list of year-end activities. So that's appreciated.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we're already getting that.
Feels like we were just doing this.
Just talking about it. Okay,
Can we, Mr. Stokes, can we order a little less wind for high school graduation this year?
the
I'll
heat is
see what
in
I can do,
June.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 13, request for future agenda items. Okay, seeing none, move on to 14, adjournment before 9 o'clock. Thank you all for coming and I appreciate all the hard work.